I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Today we're going to be talking about maximizing your Phase 1 to Phase 2 conversion rate. So this should take about 30 minutes, and hopefully there's something useful here. We'll be recording this, of course, and it'll be posted on our website. And if you'd like slides, please just drop your name in the chat box, and we'll get those out to you. So as far as an outline, we'll cover some context. Why are we here? Process for going through a Phase 1. After award, we'll look at project execution, and then key considerations for winning Phase 2, and then some additional resources from TechOp. So just a one slide intro to TechOp. So we're founded in 2009, so we've been around for about 16 years. We're all about helping small businesses. Our primary focus is on technology development and commercialization, primarily helping folks that are working through SBIR and other federal funding sources. A little bit about me. So I was Navy nuke for about 9 years on submarines. After that, went to Virginia Tech, got my master's degree in material science and engineering, and then worked at a company called Luna Innovations for about 9 years here in Blacksburg. They're a big SBIR company, and so I started writing my first SBIRs back in 2001. So I've been working in the SBIR space for about 25 years, and I founded TechOp in 2009. So some context. As you're all aware, the SBIR program is up for reauthorization. Due date is September 30th of this year. It gets reauthorized every few years. There are currently 3 separate bills out, 2 of which have 2 separate versions each. The one that's the furthest along, the first to come out, was the Innovate Act, proposed by Senator Ernst of Iowa. And there are some key provisions that were in that bill that we thought were very impactful on the small business community. And so we put together a 4-part webinar series to address those specific provisions and help the small business community either leverage those or adapt to those. So some of the top ones are the Phase 1A, which is a new opportunity for first-time participants. There's an increased minimum standard for Phase 1 to Phase 2 conversion, and that's what we're talking about today. There's also an increased standard for securing non-SBIR funding, and that'll be the subject of our next webinar. And the four webinars are focused on these criteria. In the first webinar, of course, are just an overview, but the third, or the last 3 webinar series are focused on each of these criteria, or each of these provisions. In case you missed some of the earlier webinars, here's what they are. First of all, webinar 1, overview. Webinar 2 is focused on small companies or new participants or folks who haven't already participated in SBIRs. We're currently in webinar 3, and then the next webinar is focused on non-SBIR funding. These are recorded and posted on our website. They're also on LinkedIn, so you can access them a couple of different ways. So today's webinar focused on this minimum standard for Phase 1 to Phase 2 conversion. So here's the proposed standard, paraphrased. Small businesses with greater than 10 Phase 1 awards must convert at least 25% of those awards to Phase 2 in order to continue to be eligible for SBIR projects for 1 year. SBIR businesses small businesses with greater than 25 have a 50% conversion to Phase 2, or they'll be made ineligible from participating in SBIRs for a year. It doesn't take much to get to 10 Phase 1s or even 25 Phase 1s, so this will certainly impact quite a few companies that are out there participating. Looking at the national average conversion rates, DoD over the last few years, the Phase 1 to Phase 2 conversion rate has been only 29%. That's down from a historical average of about 40%. NASA conversion rates are on average around 42%, DOE 36%, HHS 22%, and NSF 15%. So there are a lot of companies that are going to be impacted by these changes and these minimum standard requirements. And that's why we focus the whole webinar on this requirement. So what does it take to really win? Pardon me. What does it take to really win a phase two? There are typically multiple phase one awards, and so you're in direct competition with a handful of other, highly motivated, highly capable people. So what are some key components that you really need to focus on in your phase two? Firstly, I would say strongly address the topic requirements. So it's an absolute given. You have to address all the topic requirements, and not just for the phase two, but also thinking beyond phase two, and how is your technology going to make it into either a federal program or into a commercial product. Knowing the TPOC requirements and their preferences. So your TPOC, your technical point of contact, your technical manager will have some unique insights on your project and on the requirements that it's targeted to fill. Now they typically can't give you specific guidance per se, but they can give you, some insights. Connecting the dots with the use case. So one of the things we see fairly frequently is the small business that's performing on a phase one. They're experts in the field of what they're doing, but they may not have real subject matter expertise in the use case. And so it's really critical to have someone who's deeply familiar with the use case to be involved in the team. And focusing on long-term transition and commercialization. Another outcome of the proposed bills is a much higher requirement for commercializing technology. And so there's going to be a much more emphasis on that. And so we need to all focus on, how does this technology really get into a commercial product? And then finally, planning, executing, and reporting on your work. One of the things that is reviewed in a phase two is, they're not just looking at, can you do research? They know that you can do research, but can you plan your program effectively? Can you execute according to that plan? And then can you report effectively on what you've done? So there's an additional layer of project management that's required to be demonstrated to be competitive in phase twos. So, and today we're going to focus on some common shortcomings that we've seen from phase two development efforts in the past. One of the goals here is to be fairly actionable, so that there are, there's guidance, specific actionable guidance that you can go and put into practice in the near term. So, congratulations, you won a phase one. Now what? Now it's time to really start planning for the phase two. So your basic elements of a phase one project, of course, are your contract negotiation, refining your project plan with the TPOC, getting work started, getting the phase two proposal started, and then your final report and project review. Some of these, most of these elements directly impact your phase two success. Contract negotiation, not so much. Your project plan. So you start your phase one with a project plan that comes from the proposal. But it is likely that you would want to refine that based on insights that you receive from the TPOC. Again, you can't make contractual changes, but you may shift your focus area a little bit based on what you learned from that agency kickoff meeting. Beginning work. Typically, when the work begins is when you want to update your gap analysis. Particularly when you're doing early stage R&D, you get into the work part of it, and you realize, wait a minute, I might have a hard time executing on phase two, and so at that time is a good time to really rethink your gap analysis and what do you need to have in place to be competitive for phase two. And then phase two proposal preparation. This needs to start. Doesn't have to start at the beginning of the phase one, but certainly early in the phase one process, and certainly as soon as you receive the specific instructions. But there are a lot of things you can be doing to put yourself in a better position for phase two, even earlier in the process, even earlier in the project. Specifically planning for transition and commercialization. This will typically require partnering with some other team member, maybe it's a defense prime that's got a footprint in the industry that you're trying to target. Maybe it's a manufacturing partner. Maybe it's some other type of technical partner that you need. But getting that team together early is certainly helpful. And then final report, final review meeting. We'd like to do this early enough to inform the phase 2 proposal. There may be things that you learn from this meeting that you can use to then influence your phase 2 proposal. So try to get this done maybe a month or so before the final proposal is due. So that kickoff meeting, some of the things that we'd like to see covered are here. And first of all, we'd like to see a briefing the TPOC on the approach, project objectives, your technology transition plan, and then a discussion of risk. And the whole purpose of this is really to engage strongly with your TPOC. Your TPOC should be your best advocate in the project between you and the federal space. And so getting them engaged early in the process is very helpful, and getting them excited about your work and about what you're doing is also extremely important. That's why you need to be looking ahead to the technology transition piece, to let them know that, hey, you're developing something that they're going to be able to get into the fleet or get into whatever federal program they're trying to support. So on the approach, typically a short slide deck is a good idea. Not terribly long. We don't want to put them to sleep, but a short slide deck. If you have any additional supporting data that maybe you couldn't fit into the proposal, which is often the case, bring that. And then highlighting differentiators. So what sets you apart from all the other competitors that are also doing kickoff meetings with the TPOC? You need to be able to differentiate yourself. And I like to look at, what are the fundamental advantages? And we'll talk about this in a second, but you should be able to find information on your competitors out there and get some idea of what they're doing. And then you can highlight, what kind of physics-based, fundamental advantages do you have over competing technologies? So highlight those in your approach. And then objectives. This speaks to the project management portion, where you want to understand what are the key performance parameters that this technology, or this product has to meet. What are the milestones and validation tests that you're going to use along the way? I'm a firm believer that having firm milestones with some sort of quantitative deliverable, whether it's a piece of data or a piece of hardware, is really important and speaks much more than 1,000 words to convincing your TPOC that you're ready to move on to phase 2. And then phase 1 success criteria. Of course, this is delineated in the topic description, but sometimes you can find some additional things or suggestions that will help you focus your work to make sure you're meeting and exceeding those success criteria. TRL progression, understanding what they want to see from a TRL perspective is typically helpful. And then technology transition. Here's where we're looking at that end use case. And not all agencies will have a predefined use case. There's only a handful really that are going to be the acquisition side of the equation. Several other agencies, they want you to develop a product, but they're not going to buy the product. So understanding that target use case is critical. And what are the operational requirements? Your TPOC will often have good insights on what those operational requirements are, but depending on the technical area or the agency, they might not be an expert in that field. And then you'd want to bring in another subject matter expert that does have expertise in that area. If you are pitching to an agency like DoD or NASA that is going to ultimately buy the product, you want to have a good understanding of the acquisition process. How does that work? Who makes those decisions? And your TPOC, again, should be a good advocate to help identify that. Commercial markets, they'll typically have some ideas about commercial markets, but even more importantly, I think having you, the performer, bring ideas as to what kind of commercial markets are you going to target, and why, and how are you going to enter those markets is really important. Again, you want to get them excited about what you're doing and where you're going. And then risks, risk and mitigation plan. So when we're working with small businesses on their projects, we often go and talk to the technical monitor ourselves, and there are two types of risks we like to cover. Technical risks, based on the TPOC's expertise in the area, or based on their knowledge of what has been proposed in the past. What do they see as the biggest technical risk? What's going to cause this technology to fail? And then related but separate is transition risk. So if we assume that the technology works perfectly, what's going to be that barrier to entry? And the answer may be, well, there's bureaucratic red tape that's going to take 10 years for them to buy something. Or if you're working in like the nuclear field, for example, it's going to be a transition risk is the long term that it's going to take. So understanding those risks is extremely helpful, and then that'll help you adjust adjust the focus of your work accordingly, i.e. to explain how you are going to overcome that risk. Okay, so refining your project plan. Again, review this with your TPOC at the kickoff meeting. Demonstrate that you can manage a project as well as do research. So again, this is not just about doing research. It's about how are you going to manage getting this technology into a product and into production. Collateral for each task. So again, going back to that concept of having some sort of a quantitative metric that says, yes, you've accomplished this task and here's why. Typically in the project plan, they'll have around 5 or 6 tasks. That's not etched in stone anywhere. It's just typical. The collateral for each task, is not necessarily a contract deliverable, but it certainly is nice to have and demonstrates progress. Okay, on the commercialization side of the agency kickoff meeting, we want to emphasize that transition either to a product for the federal agency or a commercial product. So we want to confirm the use case, both within the agency. Sometimes the TPOC can connect you with some of the end users within the agency that might be utilizing this product at the end of the development cycle, and that can provide some really great feedback. They may be able to put you in touch with them, but the more closely you can get your TPOC involved in getting you plugged in to those agency and end users, the better off you're going to be. That'll also potentially bring in more stakeholders at your final briefing. You can then pitch to at your final briefing. Get more of the decision makers excited. Confirm your ability to connect with specific requirements. Kind of touched on that already. If there's no end user or program of record identified, and a lot of them there aren't, right? So if you're doing a DOE project, for example, or an NSF project, there's not an end user, there's not a program of record. So then what do you do? Well, is this foundational research? Are we doing research for the sake of, I hate saying research for the sake of research, but are we doing more foundational research? And if so, what problem are we really trying to solve? And if it's a low TRL research, then it should be expected that you're not going to have a product at the end of the phase 2, of course. And so, confirm that near-term commercialization is not necessarily a success criteria, for that particular project. If there's no end user, but it's operational, then who are the prime contractors or the industry principals that are involved in that market? Are there other prospective federal users, and if so, who are they, and can we get introductions? And then I would emphasize the TABA support to clarify phase 3, and make some connections within those markets. For those of you who might not be aware, TABA is technical and business assistance, and several of the agencies offer additional funding through TABA to support the commercialization of your technology. And that can be a great tool to go and make some connections within the market. So beginning work, so executing on your plan. You want to be able to have periodic updates with the TPOC. You should probably cover the requested periodicity in your kickoff meeting, but monthly typically seems to be a good periodicity, or maybe they want to see a report at each milestone. But the point is, you want to keep that TPOC regularly engaged in your project, and then confirm that your staff and subcontractors understand the work scope, particularly subcontractors. We've seen some significant miscommunication between the SBIR, prime and their subcontractors, and so you have to make sure that subcontractors are both aware of the schedule and performance requirements of whatever it is they're developing. So staying on top of your team. And with your subs, I would definitely have regular performance meetings to make sure that they are on track. Pardon me. Display professional project management process and execution. So this means that you're managing that project in a clean way, concise way, with regular reporting, your regular deliverables. You're meeting those milestones, and that'll give the TPOC confidence that you're ready to move to phase 2 and beyond. So gap analysis. So as mentioned earlier, when you start your work is when you realize, wait, I might have gaps that I didn't have before. Particularly, so when I was at Luna, we were working on fiber optic sensors, and we were putting them into very, very harsh environments. And so a lot of the work that we did was kind of discovery, honestly. How do you put this fiber optic sensor in a very, very high temperature environment? And so we'd get into a project and realize we have some technical gaps that we didn't think we were going to have. And so you want to make sure that you're going to be able to meet the technical goals of your phase 2. And if that means you've got to bring on maybe another team member or a subject matter expert or whatever that is, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to meet all those technical goals. And it'd be a good time to go back to the topic description to see what do they really want you to accomplish in the phase 2, and make sure you can do that. I mentioned transition partner earlier. Oftentimes, if you're, let's say, selling into the DoD, it's helpful to team with one of the prime contractors that already has a footprint in that industry. But similar concept applies to energy, or really any of the other industries. If you're creating a component technology, it's really critical to team with someone who's putting that system level technology together, and then get that into the market. And then a production plan, and that implies hardware. A lot of projects, of course, are software, but you need to have some plan as to how are you going to produce the product at the end of the day, whether that's hardware or software, and do you have the facilities internally to do that, or you're going to have to bring on maybe a contract manufacturer, whatever that is. Take a hard look at how are you going to transition from where you're at today to getting into mass production or mass distribution. And then validating the market. A lot of times, folks will have a brilliant idea, and greatest things since sliced bread, but if there's not a market demand for it, it's going to die on the table. And so you want to validate the market, go out and talk to specific end users, and find is there really a need for this. One of the deficits, if you will, of the working on some of these projects is there's a time lag between the time that the topics are originated and the time that you're producing a product. And sometimes, those proposed needs are maybe out of date, or they've already been solved by something else. And so you want to really make sure that the thing that you're developing and the performance parameters that you're achieving are really meeting a market that wants it. So, and that's a lot of actually what we do is we go out and find folks in specific markets that can validate whether or not we're developing something that's in demand. And then finally, your final report and review meeting. Again, you want to do this early enough, before the phase 2 proposal deadline, so that you can impact your phase 2 proposal process. And we like to encourage folks to link back to the topic description, right? What did they originally ask for in the topic description, and are we, did we meet all that? Note the any kind of collateral that you've generated from completing each task, and the work breakdown structure. And collateral can be, again, it doesn't have to be hardware, but it can be data, it can be an experiment. But whatever it is that you developed or achieved to show that you've hit that milestone, let's bring that. And also when you're presenting that kind of data, it's important, and I see this all the time. You've accomplished something, and that's great, but then there's a break in the message that says, well, here's why that's important. Here's how that is going to enable us to achieve phase 2 and to get to a product. So you always have to make that connection. Sorry, my voice is failing today. I think my career as a pop singer is over. But confirming you're prepared for phase 2 and everything's ready to go. Make sure you have everything you need to get that to be competitive in that phase 2 proposal. And then validate the phase 3 and commercial opportunities. So if there's any lingering doubt or data that you need to say, yes, this is a good market, commercial market to go to, or yes, we can meet all the requirements of this federal opportunity or federal application, make sure you have all that in place. That's something that if you're utilizing the TABA program, your TABA vendor should be going out and doing that. You're making connections within your industry and finding those future opportunities for you. And also discussing the benefits of commercialization for each use case, and then market data, which is important from a strategic point of view to inform, where do you really focus all your effort? And so looking at a reasonably sized market and a reasonably growing market is extremely important. And also typically, if you've had a good TABA vendor helping you during the phase 1, you've made some one-on-one connections with folks in your industry. And so highlight any feedback that you've received from them that validates the importance of what you're developing. And finally, in that meeting, let's engage all the stakeholders. So presumably you've made some connections with other federal contacts that are interested in the technology. So if possible and if permissible, let's get them all engaged in that meeting. Okay, so that was all about executing the phase 1 to put yourself in a better position to make a phase 2 case. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the phase 2 proposal itself. Now this is fairly generalized because we're trying to apply it to any agency, but oftentimes we'll do specific webinars ahead of specific agency phase 2 solicitations. And so if you're interested in some of the more specific webinars, keep your eyes open on LinkedIn or put your name in the chat box and we'll get you on our mailing list. But we often do specific webinars that really drill into specific agency requirements. So one key thing to always consider is maintaining focus on your merit review criteria. I absolutely cannot overstress this enough. We like to tell folks that proposals are not read, they're graded. My colleague Randy likes to tell the story that, there's not somebody, in the government who's sitting on his deck, relaxing and they're reading your proposal, page by page. They're going through and they're looking for specific merit review criteria. And did you meet that? And then can I check that box? Can I give this person a good score? So we always want to focus everything on the merit review criteria. So make sure you have a good understanding of that. On the right here, this is an example of one of our strategy guides. This is also something that we put out for all of our clients at no charge. But we specifically map content from the proposal to the specific merit review criteria, and we summarize that in a nice table up front. So the busy reviewer can just say, here's the thing I need to score. Here's how they addressed it. Check. All right, I'm rolling through this proposal. So having something like this that really ties your performance and your future tasking, to the merit review criteria is extremely helpful. So, and you want to start with developing your strategy and win theme. So it's a kind of easy trap to fall into to just start writing tasks, right? You think, hey, in phase 2, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. What we really need to do before you start that type of writing is develop your overall strategy for the proposal and the win themes. Win themes specifically, how are you going to differentiate your technology from the competitors? And then make sure that that's integrated throughout the proposal. Next, you want to create a compliant outline with all of the correct sections, all the correct headers, and the font sizes, and things like that. And that's another thing that our strategy guide accomplishes. Then you want to kind of brainstorm, what's a more compelling argument, for success. Just conceptually, what is success at the end of this phase two? A lot of that can be derived from the topic description. A lot of it, of course, can be derived from your TPOC. But what is that compelling argument? I said early on, strongly focus on the merit review criteria in the writing, and make sure that you're differentiating yourself from the competition. By this stage in the project, oftentimes, award data for your competitors is published either on SBIR.gov or on usaspending.gov, and you can go in and find who are your competitors, and then do some research to try to estimate or guesstimate, if you will, how they're approaching this project, and then differentiate yourself in your proposal. If you have a transition partner on your project, they should be actively engaged in the process and in the scope of work. We like to encourage our folks, encourage our clients to bring that transition partner in as a subcontractor, even though it costs some cash out of your budget. Oftentimes, it's very worthwhile. So having them actively engaged, I think, is very, very valuable. So the phase two work strategy. So this is the what are you going to do? And we like to remind folks to stay firmly grounded in the topic. What did the topic really ask for at the beginning? And answer the question, why did we come into the forest? Pardon me. So looking at the topic description, statement of work from phase one, phase two, making sure we're consistent with what we said we were going to do. And when you're describing the phase one plan, the argument you want to make is, and I like to include this as a summary. Here's the phase one plan, and here's what we did. But really, why is that important, and why does this make us ready for phase two? Again, it's very important not just to say, hey, we accomplished task 1, 2, 3, but really the accomplishment of that objective. How does that put you in a better place to succeed in phase two? And then looking at the commercialization in applicable markets. During the phase one, you might have realized that that commercial market that I thought was going to be great maybe isn't so great for whatever reason. And so I think revisiting that is important. Pardon me. Increasing emphasis on commercialization. This is another theme that is coming out of all of the proposed legislation that's under review at the moment. Is an increasing emphasis on commercialization. So they want to see the SBIR tax dollars going towards productivity, and so you're going to see an increased requirement to commercialize the technology. So make sure that your work plan is focused in that direction. And emphasizing phase three. Here also, I can't emphasize this enough, but keeping that long view that says, here's where we're going. How is this going to get to a product? And emphasizing not just not just the fact that there's a good market out there or there's a demand out there, but emphasizing how are you going to get there? What's the process? So throughout the project, we want to focus on that phase three, and then in the proposal, we want to make the case that how is that phase three success going to be enabled by the phase two funding and by the phase two work plan. Use cases, looking at the federal use cases, again, getting some subject matter expertise that can help identify or characterize what those use cases look like can be helpful here. And then the real benefits. And so here's another place to differentiate yourself from your competitors is how are they going to benefit from your technology? Think of it in terms of either it might be dollars saved, it might be weight saved, it might be lives saved, but what is the real benefit of your technology to the end user? Be specific. Quantitative numbers beat hand waving every day. So be as quantitative as possible. Then if you had some one-on-one interaction with those end users and they've given some specific feedback, put that in there as well. One of the things I like to do, I didn't write this down here. One of the things I like to do is if we get a letter of support from say a potential commercial partner or a transition partner, get them to put in a quote that extols the benefits of your technology and why that's important to their industry, and then pop that out in a highlight box. Make it obvious that you're talking to folks in your industry and that they're excited about your technology. So proposal management. So phase twos are a fairly involved effort, and it really takes a good proposal management perspective. First of all, of course, identify the writing team. Who's going to be the PI? Who's going to do the editing? Who's going to do the graphics? Who's going to identify that writing team? Pro tip: make sure your PI is not going to go on vacation 2 weeks before the proposal is due. I've seen that. It does not end well. So make sure that your team is aware of their responsibilities and that they're available for the proposal duration. This, particularly towards the end, this is all hands on deck operation. Schedule milestones, and so these milestones are, when you need to have the outline done, when you need to have the first draft done, when you need to have X, Y, Z done. So set those milestones and stick to them. It's really easy to let some of these things slip, but if you let it slip to the end, that does not end well either. Review the gap analysis. I think we touched on that enough. But make sure we have everything in place to meet the phase two objectives. Include multiple reviews. I think it's really helpful to have a first top level review, probably by the executive team, to say, okay, first of all, is this really in line with our business objectives? Really, that should have been done before you wrote the phase one proposal. But does this really align with our business objectives? And then is this, this theme, is it really compelling? And so having that top level review is helpful. But then you want to have a detailed, compliance review, a red team review of a draft, technical writing review to catch grammatical errors and things like that. So make sure those reviews get scheduled. Make sure the win themes are integrated throughout the project or throughout the proposal. And this is why it's so important to start with that outline first, well before you start the actual writing, to make sure that those concepts are all integrated into the proposal. And then some additional details. And I write here is the key takeaway. Take it seriously. When I was at Luna, I was the PI on 7 different phase 2 proposals, and I never wrote a phase 2 proposal that did not require at least one all-nighter. So these are a dedicated effort. You've got to put everything you got into them, because you can be sure that your competitor is doing the same. We want to start with validating the proposal instructions and the evaluation criteria. Make sure that you're using the right instructions. This is another thing I've seen in the past where it's an agency and all agencies do this. They periodically will update their phase 2 proposal instructions, and someone went back and said, well, I've got this phase 2 instructions from 2 or 3 years ago. I'll just start with that. And then lo and behold, at the end of the day, it's not compliant with the current phase 2 instructions, and you get rejected on an administrative review. Start the proposal preparations early. Compliant outline, again, should be your starting point for the actual writing. Make sure it's compliant with the instructions, and make sure it's really pointed towards the merit review criteria. I mentioned earlier, your transition partner should be an integrated team member. So that's going to require a letter of commitment that takes a month or so to get in place, oftentimes. So start that process early. There again, that's something that your TABA provider can certainly help with. You're making those connections and pushing through those letters of commitment. Make sure they have a role. I think the reviewers really like to see that transition partner integrated into the statement of work. Are they going to provide maybe validation testing? Are they going to provide maybe some design inputs? Or are they going to provide a piece of test hardware? Whatever they're going to do, make sure they're integrated into the statement of work. And allocating budget, yes, it costs funds out of your out of your budget, but it's oftentimes very worthwhile. And then LLCs in the commercialization section, that's also where I like to pop out those highlight boxes where an end user or maybe your transition partner has said, yeah, this is great. It meets an identified demand. Let's put that in a highlight box and make it obvious in the commercialization section. So summary and wrap up. You're in a horse race. You've got typically 2 or 3 other competitors that are in your exact same boat. They're all highly capable. They're all highly motivated, and there's only going to be one phase 2 awarded. So everyone is full bore at this. Research your competitors, emphasize how you're going to be better than them. And then this transition piece is key. Again, that's going to be an increasing differentiator moving forward, is the ability to transition your technology to a product, and not just identifying that there's a big market out there, but emphasizing how are you going to get into that market, and who is on your team that's going to enable you to get into that market. I think I missed the last bullet there. Oh, in professional project management and reporting. Again, have a project plan, have milestones, let them know that you're managing their funding effectively. So some additional resources from TechOp. Like I said, we're all about helping small businesses. We really enjoy that. There's a lot of no-cost resources that we provide. And so here's a handful of them. So upcoming webinar. So this upcoming webinar is part 4 of the 4-part series, and it addresses 2 key provisions from the Innovate Act. And this is paraphrased, so don't quote me on this, and I don't want to go to jail for misquoting anybody, so it's paraphrased. But companies with $75 million in SBIR awards and STTR awards will no longer be eligible for SBIR and STTR funding, period. That means there will be no further SBIR funding for companies that have a lifetime award of $75 million in funding. And that includes parent and all subsidiary companies. It's written with legalese, so any including subsidiary companies, implies that limit. So the next SBIR the next webinar is going to focus on moving beyond SBIR funding. Small businesses with greater than 25 phase 2, again, lifetime awards over the lifetime of the company must have SBIR receipts exceeding the total of phase 1, phase 2 awards, and receive a minimum of 65% of their receipts from non-SBIR funding for the 3 years preceding the most recent fiscal year. And if you're concerned about the specific wording of that, I would dig into the Act and get the specific wording. But the bottom line is there's going to be a tremendous number of companies that are either going to be ineligible for SBIR or they're going to be heavily restricted on SBIRs. And so there's an absolute requirement to go and find some non-SBIR funding. And so that's what we're going to focus on next. So this webinar, when you get this, if you press the slides, that button is live. You can click that and register, or if you go to our website, there's a registration link for that. That's coming up here in a couple of weeks, July 23rd. And that one will be given by Randy. Randy had to be on travel this week, and so I'm standing in for him, but Randy will be giving that here in a couple of weeks. Other informational resources. So we've dedicated a whole section of our website to SBIR reauthorization. And we have separate sections for current news and events related to SBIR reauthorization. We have links to all of the current proposed legislation with some additional summary information behind that. And then for those who want to get involved and you contact your representative officials, we have a data map here that shows SBIR funding by state and by congressional district. And so if you want to notify your congresspeople why you care about SBIR funding, there's some data there that you can utilize. Oh, sorry, I clicked on a link. There we are. Next is our topic search tool. We call this START, or the Strategic Topic Alignment and Ranking Tool. This is something we've recently released. What it is an AI-driven topic matching tool that will take capabilities from a small company and match those to existing topics. And so we've just recently started releasing this on a large scale, so that all of our clients and the folks we've talked with in the past, anyone who's given us their technical capabilities, we've got that in our database. And so now as topics are coming out, folks are getting notified of matching topics, typically within a day or two of the solicitations hitting the street. Again, this is on our website. If you'd like to enter your company's information, there's a button there to do that. Again, this is a free service. We just want to create awareness for small companies that topics are coming up, particularly folks that haven't won in the past, or who may not be able to track solicitations carefully. This is a good reminder that the topics are out. And then finally, my marketing and sales guy suggested that I include at least one slide of paid services so that we can maintain payroll. But so some of the things we do and offer to clients is, first of all, proposal development, starting from not just topic selection, but topic vetting, and then coaching through the proposal writing process, developing commercialization strategies, all of that. Technical and business assistance. Most of our work is as a TABA vendor, TABA provider, where we are taking a very integrated approach to supporting those small companies in helping them find, whatever they need to get to the next stage of funding, whether that's, market connections, whether that's a manufacturing partner, whatever that is, we go and put that together. We take a very proactive approach at our TABA work. Training, we do a variety of trainings, everything from what's called a proposal boot camp, which is a 2-day on-site in-person training session where we look at prior awards and educate the proposal writers on how to view a proposal from the eyes of the reviewer. And people come out of this literally completely changed in how they look at proposals. We also do training for state-based organizations, such as FAST awardees. We do that for currently the state of Virginia, New York, and North Carolina. And then strategic marketing. So for folks that maybe have products that they want to market to a broader audience, maybe they want to increase their social media presence. They want to improve their website SEO. We offer strategic marketing to those folks. That concludes this webinar. Again, I appreciate your time in attending, and hopefully this has been helpful and that you can enjoy or join us on the next webinar. Thank you.